Right. Let's start with the prayers. You can repeat after me. Om Sadashivasamārambhām
ॐ
सदाशिवसमारम्भाम्
सदाशिवसमारम्भाम्
शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम्
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 अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्ताम्
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 वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्
वन्दे
वन्दे
गुरुपरम्पराम्
गुरुपरम्पराम्
सरस्वती नमस्तुभ्यम्
सरस्वती
नमस्तुभ्यम्
नमस्तुभ्यम्
वरदे कामरूपिणी
वरदे
वरदे
कामरूपिणि
कामरूपिणी
विद्यारम्भं करिष्यामि
विद्यारम्भं
विद्यारम्भं
करिष्यामि
सिद्धिर्भवतु मे सदा
सिद्धिर्भवतु मे
सिद्धिर्भवतु
सदा
मे सदा।
ॐ सहनाववतु
ॐ
सहना भवतु
सहनौ भुनक्तु
सहनौ भुनक्तु
सह वीर्यं करवावहै
सह वीर्यं करवावहै
तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै
तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै
ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः
ॐ
ॐ
शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः
वासुदेवेन्द्रयोगीन्द्रम्
वासुदेवेन्द्रयोगीन्द्रम्
नत्वा ज्ञानप्रदं गुरुम्
नत्वा ज्ञानप्रदं गुरुम्
मुमुक्षूणां हितार्थाय
मुमुक्षूणां हितार्थाय
तत्त्वबोधोऽभिधीयते
तत्त्वबोधोऽभिधीयते
ॐ नमः शिवाय
ॐ नमः
ॐ
शिवाय
नमः शिवाय।
Okay, so now I have muted everybody. If you want to speak, you can unmute yourself and then go back to mute so that it doesn't disturb the class. Okay, so last class we were doing, what were we doing?
Sampath. We were doing Shatka Sampatti.
Right, we were doing Shat Sampatti or the sixfold inner disciplines. So this comes under Sadhana Chatushtayam, the fourfold qualifications required for a student to be eligible for Jnana Yoga, for the study of Vedanta. Okay, and these are the four qualifications. We saw Viveka and Vairagya, discrimination and dispassion, and we were in the middle of Shat Sampatti, and there is one more after that, Mumukshutva. Now, under Shat Sampatti, there are 6. Okay, and we saw the first 2. What are they?
Shama
and Dhamma.
Okay, what is Shama?
Mind control.
Thought discipline.
It's a
Yes.
Manograha.
Mano Nigraha, thought discipline, managing your thoughts, managing the stress of the mind. And what is Dhamma?
Control of sense organs.
Control of the sense organs. And we said it is not suppression, it is intelligent redirection or rechannelization of the sense organs. Now, anybody remembers what is the third one?
Uparati.
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 Right. So Uparati is the third one which we are going to see today. And as you remember, the student asks the question and the teacher answers. So let's read this. Uparamakkaha
Uparamah kaha.
Swadharmanushthanameva
Dharmanushanameva.
Okay. So today we are going to see what is Uparama. It is also called as Uparati. Okay, same meaning. Some books will have Uparati and some books may have Uparamaha. Both are same. So the student has asked the question, what is Uparamaha? And the teacher has answered as Swadharma Anushtanam Eva. Now let's try to understand what this Uparama means. So there are three meanings to the word Uparamaha, or three interpretations that we can take. The first meaning is that it is maintaining the calmness of the mind. Okay, so quietude or withdrawal of the mind. So when we say Uparamaha in one word, we say quietude or withdrawal, maintaining the calmness. Now this appears very similar to Shama, right? Shama also we said it is peace of mind, tranquility of mind, and here we're saying maintaining calmness of the mind. So what is the difference? The difference is that Shama is calming down an agitated mind, whereas Uparamaha is maintaining the calm state. Okay, the mind is already calm, you are just maintaining the calmness. Prevention versus cure. Okay, so Shamaha is like the cure. It brings down the level of agitation in the mind, and Uparamaha is the maintaining of that calm state. That is Uparamaha. There is another meaning to the word Uparamaha. It also sometimes refers to the sannyasa ashrama, the monastic life, taking up sannyasa. Okay, that is also called Uparamaha sometimes. It is not very relevant right now in our context, but one of the meanings. Okay, and the third meaning is what the author has given here. He says Swadharma Anushtanam. Okay, Swadharma Anushtanam. Now, to understand what is Swadharma Anushtanam, first we have to understand a different concept, a different topic, then we can come back to Swadharma Anushtanam. Now, in the scriptures, all activities are classified into five groups. Okay. The first group is Nitya Karma. Nitya Karma are those activities that you have to do daily. Okay, so there are a bunch of prescribed rituals that are supposed to be done according to the Vedas daily. For example, Sandhya Vandana or Agnihotra or Pancha Mahayajnas, all of these. Okay, these are the Nitya Karmas. Other than this, they include all your daily responsibilities, things that you have to do daily that you cannot avoid at all. Okay, another example is being a parent. Okay, if Sunday comes, you cannot say, okay, today is Sunday, I'm going to take a break from being a parent. That doesn't happen, right? You still have to take care of your child even on a Sunday. So it is a Nitya Karma. There's no avoiding this. You have to, it has to be done every single day. Nitya Karma. Then there is Naimittika Karma. Naimittika Karma are also mandatory actions that come occasionally. Okay, they're not there every day, but once in a while they come up. For example, if there is a birth in the family, or if there is a death in the family, if there is a wedding, on those days you do certain other rituals, extra rituals, right? You do certain other things that are mandatory for that on festivals, for example. So on those days, which come occasionally, they are not every day, they come as the occasion rises, and on those days you have to do certain extra mandated activities. Again, there are many prescribed activities in the Vedas which come under this Naimittika karma. Now then there is the third type of activity, which is the Kamya karma. Kamya karma are those activities that you do to fulfill your desires. Okay, any activity to fulfill a desire is a Kamya karma. And in the Vedas, again, many yajnas and rituals are listed for Kamya karma. There are rituals to go to heaven, there are rituals to have children, there are rituals for rain, for marriage, for anything. Okay, for any desire, you do this yajna, and then it's supposed to happen. So that is a Kamya karma, to fulfill a desire. And if you extend it to the modern day, most of the things we do these days is Kamya karma, right? We have some desire and we want to fulfill, so we work, we save money, go on vacation, all these things, right? So those activities that are done to support the desire, that is called Kamya karma. Then there's this Prayashchitta karma. Prayashchitta karma you can translate as penance. Okay, having done a wrong activity or having done some erroneous action, now you are doing another action to rectify that. Okay, that is called prayashchitta. It's a remedial action. For example, suppose you eat something bad and you know it is bad and you've still eaten, and now there is a stomach problem, so you take a medicine. Taking that medicine is a prayashchitta karma. Another example, suppose you yell at somebody, later you have to go back and say sorry, right? That saying sorry is a prayashchitta karma. Okay, a remedial action to rectify some previous wrong action. Then there is the fifth one, which is nishiddha karma. Nishiddha karma is a forbidden activity. This activity may be beneficial to me, but it is harmful to somebody else. It harms others and it may or may not be beneficial to me. And these are the forbidden actions. These are actions that you are not supposed to do according to the Vedas. And it's not that, it's not a commandment. Okay, it's not that if you do this, then somebody somewhere will punish you. It's not like that. As its own natural consequence, the action itself will result in some unpleasant situation later. Okay, for example, a mild example, we all know that eating junk food is bad for health. So in a way, it is a nishiddha karma. In a way, okay, as just a mild example. And if I go on eating junk food, what happens? As its own natural consequence, my body falls sick, right? Nobody punishes me from anywhere else. So these kind of things are nishiddha karma. They are, told to you out of a deeper understanding to do and not do certain things. Because as its own natural consequence, it will not end very well. Okay, so these are called nishiddha karma, forbidden activities. Now, how it relates to Uparamaha is that the author says Swadharma Anushtanam, right? The first two are called Swadharma. Okay, Swadharma is your own duties, responsibilities, or activities that you are supposed to do. And the other three are not under this category of Swadharma. Okay, so when he says Swadharma Anushtanam, he says perform your own activities, perform the mandated activities which are Nitya and Naimittika karma, and reduce or eliminate the other three as much as possible. Now, the first two have the capacity to maintain or reduce the FIR. And the other three, the last three, will only result in high FIR. What is FIR?
Frequency, intensity,
And recovery time.
Of
Emotional turmoil.
yes. Okay, so frequency, intensity, and recovery time of emotional disturbances. So, in other words, indulging more and more in the last three will increase the emotional turbulence in the mind, whereas engaging more in the first two will reduce or maintain it. Is this clear?
Yes.
Okay, any
Yes,
questions?
clear.
Yes, it's clear.
Yes, it's clear.
Okay, so this is what the author means by Swadharma Anushtanam. He says, be established in the first two types of activities and reduce the other three so that the FIR is maintained, so that the calmness of the mind is maintained. Okay. Any questions?
I have something related Prayaschitta, because if the wrong action has already been taken, so is it not that we should do Prayaschitta? So like maybe does this mean that you reduce doing wrong action and then you don't need to do this one? Otherwise, like reduce. Oh,
You will only have to do Prayaschitta only when a wrong action has been done, right? So the point is to reduce the wrong action in the first place.
yes.
The chance for
that is.
Prayaschitta itself should not arise.
That is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Ki, so, like, it's not like you do wrong action, but you reduce Prayaschitta. That's
Yeah.
not.
No. Prayaschitta is a remedial action. It has to be done. If you don't do it anyway, the problem only multiplies.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So after these first two karmas, there is kamya karma.
Yeah.
So we are done with first two, then only we should go for the kamya karma. Is it so?
It is not chronological. It is not that you do this, then you do this. It's not like that. These are just categories of
Okay. So
actions.
will it depend on our age, like when we are married? So we have to take care of our children and our family, in-laws family, and then there is
At
kamya.
different stages, you have different responsibilities and you also have different desires. As a child, the responsibility is to study in school and, other things. And the desire is maybe a chocolate, And as you grow older, the desires also change, the responsibility also change. When you get married, the responsibilities towards the family, children, and your job, career. And the desire is like something like, let me get a bigger house or a bigger car. These are the desires. So the desire also has changed and the responsibility also has changed. And, incidentally, sometimes they overlap also. Some things can be kamya and nitya karma. The same activity can be both, but he's telling indulge only in the nitya karma and reduce the kamya karma. Why reduce kamya karma? Because kama, like how we discussed previously, has two children, lobha and krodha. If it is fulfilled, it results in more desire, and if it is unfulfilled, then it results in anger and emotional disturbance.
So maybe we should reduce our desires so that we can will indulge less in kamya karmas.
You can, yes, you have, well, it's not so easy to reduce desires, is it? And that is why the desire can be kept as long as it is not a binding desire. If you can convert your binding desires to non-binding desires, you can keep them. It should not have the potential to harm you, to disturb you. Then you can keep any desire you like. But that is easier said than done, huh?
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Medaji, see,
Yeah.
when your kamya karma becomes your nitya karma, isn't that swadharma?
As Nitya Karma, it
Sometimes.
is Swadharma. as Kamya, the Kamya aspect, it's not Swadharma.
Because as a student, a child wants to, a young person wants to, say, be a doctor, and if that person cannot become a doctor for some reason, then that is something that would affect that person's entire life. Or if that person actually becomes a doctor because he wants to become a doctor and he becomes a doctor, so that there is more joy and more fulfillment in that aspect. So how do you call it a Swadharma and not a Swadharma here in this case?
See, when you say that there is joy and fulfillment in achieving a desire, it comes attached with, with the problems basically. So if by chance, for whatever reason, that doctor status is taken away from him, he's going to crash again, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it is not real joy.
Okay,
It is
okay. So
attachment.
that's how it is karma. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Om Namah Shivaya, Meraji.
Yes.
Yeah, the question is, the different Nitya karma and Kamya karma could be the same. The difference is intention behind, no? In Kamya karma, I
Yes, the
am
intention.
desiring the result, and Nitya karma, I just am doing what never need to be done without expectation, right?
Yes, this actually is covered. There's a lot of discussion on this on all karma yoga basically in Bhagavad Gita. So you will all have to wait for all those questions. But what you were asking, it is not exactly working without expectation. Okay, you can never work without expectation because you must have an expectation. If I tell you, clean this room, the expectation is that the room must be clean at the end of the activity. And that expectation is what structures the activity, right? When I say clean the room, you will first, pick up the broom, then this, then there's a sequence. Okay, if somebody is doing a surgery and the expectation is a heart transplant, that is what structures the activity, right? You will cut the chest, not the leg, right? So expectation structures the activity. So you cannot ever remove expectation from an activity. It becomes a purposeless, meaningless activity. So what does it mean to work without desire? For that you will have to wait till Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna talks about sakama, nishkama karmas and how to handle all these, different classifications of karma. So for now, I'm going to, stop this here, and you will just have to wait till Gita. Is that okay?
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
It's a big topic, and there's a whole chapter on Gita for this. So, and it will be unfolded in a more structured way there. Okay. All right. So this is Uparamaha. Next, anyone remembers what is next after Uparamaha?
Titisha.
Sorry?
Titiksha.
Titiksha. Right. The next
Diksha.
one is Titiksha. Okay, so let's read this. Titiksha ka.
Titaka,
Shitoshna. Sukha dukkhadi. Sahishnutvam. Okay, so the next question the student has asked is Titiksha ka. What is Titiksha? And the answer is Shitoshna Sukhadakadi Sahishnutvam. So we'll come back to that. So we all know that life is not a bed of roses, right? Everybody has difficult situations. It could be career problems, financial problems, relationship problems. So many problems are there all the time. And there's nobody who avoids these problems. If nothing else, there are some problems that are just universal. For example, old age, disease, and death. right? These are unavoidable for everybody. It is there for all. Now, whenever any difficult situation comes, there are three major ways in which people handle a difficult situation. One of the three ways, okay? So the first way would be to find a solution or find a remedy for the pain. Somehow change the conditions to fix that situation. Usually the external conditions, right? So if I fall sick, then taking a medicine is a solution or a remedy to that pain, to that problem, right? So generally we try to find some solution, but what happens is that many times the solution itself causes more problems, right? So many times this happens that the solution can create more and more problems. So one of the examples in the environment conservation recently, so about like 40, 50, some number of years ago, we we had paper bags and we switched to plastic bags. We thought, okay, paper is coming from trees, we should save the trees, so let's switch to plastic. And now what happened? Plastic is not degrading, as it's not biodegradable. So it is creating another set of problems. So now we are back to paper bags. But again, the same problem, right? So paper bags come from trees. Trees are also a limited resource and all these things. So anytime, we come up with a solution, it creates a new problem sometimes, right? And sometimes what happens is that a solution is not available at all, right? There are some situations that are choiceless, that don't have any remedy or any solution. Or even if some solution is there, it might prove to be too expensive in terms of time or money or effort. So in some way it is inaccessible. It's not possible to do that solution. Right, so one of the first ways we try is to find a solution. But like I said, sometimes the solution causes more problem, or sometimes there is no solution, or it's not accessible. So then what do we do? So the next thing is to tolerate the pain. And here note that tolerate is in quotes, right? It is not actual tolerating. You think you are tolerating. You believe you are tolerating, but actually it is not toleration. You're just bearing with the situation for as long as you can, but eventually it will lead to an explosion. Okay, it will lead to some kind of destructive behavior, either an angry outburst or some irrational decision. Something will happen and it leads to an eventual explosion. Why? Because it is not real tolerance. You just have convinced yourself that you are tolerating, but actually you are not tolerating. Okay, so this is the second way that people cope with situations. And the third way is to suppress. Okay, just deny, kind of push it down. Suppress means what? You don't express, right? So you push it down, and what happens? In this case, there is self-destruction. The suppression causes either psychological or psychosomatic problems, right? It manifests either as disease or problems at the mental or at the physical level, right? So three ways. If there's one of the examples, suppose you're in a job where the boss is not good, it's not a very good work environment. So the first one would be to find a solution or to find a remedy to the pain. For example, quitting the job. Now it's not always possible to quit the job, right? Quitting the job is one solution, but it creates a new problem, which is what? Now you're unemployed, you have to find another job. So it is not a complete solution. Suppose you don't quit the job, then you just stay there and you tolerate. You think you are bearing with it, but one day there is an explosion. You might yell at somebody. You might yell at the boss himself. Suppose you don't do that. You keep on suppressing, then it results in either mental stress or some kind of physical problem, right? Some disease or something happens. So generally, three methods that people adopt to face any difficult situation. Now, is there any other way? Can we address this in any other way? And that is where titiksha comes in. Now, the English word is endurance, which seems similar to tolerance, but remember this is titiksha. Okay. And how to understand the difference between this and the second point. Okay. So all of us have a pain threshold limit, right? We have some level which is the limit. And within that limit, it is not pain, right? It is just a situation. And above the threshold, it is pain. So below the threshold, situation, above the threshold, pain. Now titiksha is raising that threshold itself. Okay. And this is the difference between the second point and the fourth. The second point says tolerate or think you are tolerating the pain. In that, what has happened? The threshold is where it is, but you have gone beyond the limit of threshold and you are in pain and suffering and think you are tolerating, but you are still in pain, and it will only go up to a point. You will bear it up to a point, and then there is a breaking point, right? It cannot go on in a sustained way for a long time. But in titiksha, the very threshold itself, you have lifted it up. You have changed the threshold. And now whatever situation happens falls within the threshold, right? So it is a situation and it can be easily handled. It can be tolerated or endured. Why? Because within the threshold, it is not pain. So anything that happens has an impact on us, right? The situation may be the same, but the impact it has on us can be moderated, can be altered. And the more titiksha you have, the less pain there is. Okay, so the impact is inversely proportional to the endurance. The more endurance, the less impact the situation has on you. Now, for example, to understand this better, since many of you are yoga teachers, did you have flexibility on day one, the very first day you practiced yoga? Did you have flexibility, like very good flexibility?
No.
No, most of us don't, right? In fact, it's a big struggle to even touch your toes. And when that is the case and you try to do a full proper Paschimottanasana, full proper bend, what happens if you force yourself? There is an injury, right? There could be a muscle tear or some other damage to the body. That is the second one. You know, you're pushing beyond the limit and then there is some kind of destruction that happens. Whereas over a period of time, slowly, you have now built up the flexibility, right? And now Paschimottanasana is so comfortable. It doesn't pain. More flexibility, less pain, right? In asana practice. So how did you do this? By, pushing that threshold of pain, by increasing the flexibility itself so that the threshold of pain changes. And now you can stay comfortably in the pose as long as you like, right? Is this clear?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Yes, yes.
Right. So, now let's just discuss a little bit about the importance of titiksha. Why is it necessary? So there's a quote which says, the more you sweat in peace, the less you bleed in war. Okay? The more you sweat in peace, the less you bleed in war. Which means what? That the preparation for any difficult situation must happen before the situation even comes, right? Once the war starts, you cannot say, okay, now I will work out and build my muscles. It's too late. It won't work. You cannot, catch the flu and then say, okay, now I will build my immunity. Again, too late. So all these things have to be done before the difficult situation comes. And the thing is that there is a difficult situation for everybody. There is nobody who escapes adversities in life, right? If nothing else, there is disease, old age, and death. That is guaranteed for everybody, right? So these kind of adversities do come, and we have to be prepared to face them. And that is why Titiksha has to be developed from as early as possible. Okay, from as early as you can, Titiksha must be developed and built. And when this is done, it builds a lot of self-confidence and self-reliance. How? Because if there is no Titiksha, what happens? There is fear and eventually anger. Even before the situation comes, just anticipating the situation, there's going to be a lot of fear, a lot of stress. And once the situation comes, there's going to be anger. Why? Because it cannot be handled. But when there is Titiksha, you have the confidence that I can handle any difficult situation. And with that comes great self-reliance and self-confidence, great relaxation also. Okay, and this is why it becomes important. And as spiritual seekers, it is even more important because not only are we facing the mundane everyday problems, but we are also going to come face to face with spiritual difficulties. And Titiksha becomes even more important. Now, since it is so important, there is an obvious question. How do I build Titiksha? How do I build endurance? You can build endurance only by enduring. Okay. For example, if we go back to the asana practice, how did you build flexibility? By working on flexibility, right? If you just wait and if you say, oh, flexibility will come, it will never come, right? In fact, it will reduce as aging happens. But how do you build this? By doing it little by little every day. You can learn swimming only by swimming, right? You cannot read a book and learn swimming. You can learn walking only by walking. You may fall, but it's okay. The only way to learn walking is by walking. In the same way, the only way to build endurance is by enduring. And many times in life, we are put in choiceless, difficult situations, and we can convert all of those situations into a practice of endurance. And this practice of endurance is what is called as tapas. Okay, tapas is willfully, consciously, deliberately putting yourself in some inconvenient or uncomfortable situation and facing it head on. Okay, and deciding that I will endure this. That is tapas. Now that situation can be artificially created or it can be a natural life situation, a difficult choiceless situation. It can be anything. So for example, if you decide to do a fast, that is a created situation. But many times there are situations where you will have to face the difficulty, right? Life itself puts it in front of you. So any difficulty, any difficult adverse situation can be converted into a tapas. And tapas builds titiksha. Using your willpower to decide that I will endure this situation, that is tapas. And over a period of time, it builds a lot of titiksha. Now, there are some 3 conditions for tapas, okay, or for building titiksha. These 3 conditions are not there in Tattva Bodha. They are from Viveka Chudamani. The first one says, Apratikara Purvakam, completing the task without breaking it. Okay, suppose you decide to do a fast, no midway snacking. That's what it means. Okay. So completing the fasting without giving up in between, without escaping in between, without seeking out the, some shortcut or some way to somehow avoid it, facing it head on. That is apratikara purvakam, completing it till the end. Then it says chinta rahitam, without dwelling on the difficulties or pains. The more and more the mind becomes obsessed with how difficult the situation is, the less the mind is available for any constructive activity. Okay, and that is chinta rahitam. Okay, for example, if you go on saying, I'm hungry, I'm hungry, I'm hungry during the fast, it's going to be counterproductive, right? It's not going to give you the intended results. And the third condition is vilapa rahitam. Vilapa means complaining or lamenting. So without complaining at all verbally about the situation, you have to complete the task. This is tapas. And any activity can be converted into a tapas. Even the lockdown, coronavirus lockdown, even a power cut at home, anything can be converted. Okay. So this is titiksha. It is very important as a spiritual seeker. Endurance or tolerance. Okay. Any questions?
I have a question, Medhaji.
Yeah.
So for example, you're a mother and your child falls and gets hurt, right? So can titiksha be also applied in a way where, okay, now he fell and he got hurt and he's bleeding on the knee, but it could have been worse in the sense he could have broken his head or something like that. Could preparation be also like that, in that way, so that if that happens in the future, for yourself to be prepared or to be able to endure that particular situation?
That I would say comes under more of vairagyam. Where is the worry for the child, or that tension, the stress coming from? It is coming from attachment to the child, right? You can love the child without attachment. If the child falls, you still have to take care. You still have to do whatever needs to be done, right? But the tension, the worry, the stress, that is stemming from raga, from attachment.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So,
But the whole point of this is being prepared for the worst.
and not just being prepared, enduring it.
Enduring. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so let's just look at the verse in Sanskrit. It says, Shitoshna Sukha Dukkha Sahishnutvam. Sahishnutvam, the last word. Sahishnutvam means bearing or tolerating. Okay, and what do you tolerate? He says, Shita Ushna. Shita means cold, Ushna means heat. Sukha Dukkha. Sukha is pleasure and Dukkha is pain. And he says Adi, etc. So he has just listed some examples. So Shita Ushna, heat and cold, are at the physical level, right? And Sukha Dukkha is at the mental level. Pleasure and pain is at the level of the mind. So both physical as well as mental situations have to be endured. You have to build immunity physically as well as mentally. And that is titiksha. Okay. Now, suppose you are a very tolerant person. Okay. Suppose you have got titiksha fully and you are now very tolerant about everything. Nothing disturbs you. And now suppose your child misbehaves. What would you do?
जा बेटा जा, जी ले अपनी जिंदगी.
Are you sure?
It already had tutor. No, you have to समझाना पड़ेगा. You have to make him on the right lines.
Right. The titiksha is for you. Okay, it's not for the child. At the physical level, whatever needs to be done still has to be done.
ये नहीं बच्चे को छोड़ नहीं सकते.
Okay.
So I have one question, Smita ji.
Yeah.
We comes up with the situation like suppose as you said that Diksha built from very small points, like we start from fasting. So if I say I don't like to do fasting because there are some situations where I don't prefer, but whenever I am at work you can keep me without meal for like 1 day or 2 day, but whenever there is situation that okay, I don't get panic if I don't get lunch or maybe dinner or maybe breakfast, but whenever it is like okay, I have to do fast, it's little difficult. So how that comes through, I'm confused here, because when I have a situation when meal is not available, I can live without meal, without panic, without anything, but whenever I know I have to do fast, I feel okay, I can't live.
Okay, so
So this is the
first of all, fasting is just an example. You can take up anything, okay? Anything can become a sadhana in that way. One of the very good ones is, of course, asana practice and pranayama practice and meditation. These are excellent to build. They will build tidiksha without even you realizing. So another example is, of course, fasting. There are many such sadhanas prescribed in the shastras. You can pick up anything and do anything. They will have similar results. And as for what you were telling about fasting and office versus actually deciding, in the office situation, you have not consciously decided. You have just forgotten or you are just distracted, it seems. But I don't think it's a conscious decision to skip a meal or to do a fast. Whereas when you actually decide, okay, today I'm going to fast, that is tapas. That is the struggle, right? It's not easy. When you first started walking as a child, did you automatically perfectly do it? No, you struggled a lot, right? You fell multiple times, you held multiple things to pull yourself up. You did so many things. You don't remember the struggle. So now it seems like, yeah, walking is so easy, but but there is a struggle. And that is tapas. And the mind will rebel. So you can set yourself easier goals, easier tasks, and work on it little by little. If one full day fasting is not possible, then go on one meal fast or go on a fruit fast for one meal only. There are multiple ways. You can tone it down and gradually increase the level. Right?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
my understanding was like whenever the situation comes, I don't have any issues, like if I don't have a meal for 2 days, just like okay, then I feel that I have a tiksha. But as you said, uh, when it comes to tapas, when I have to take a conscious decision towards the meal, so where are my decision little fumble, so I take okay, let's eat something. So my question is, like in the tapas scenario, I have a very like desire, okay, I must have meal, but whenever there's a automatic situation comes up in my life, I handle it very well. So okay, there's a no meal, no, fine, I'm okay with that. So uh, this is the imbalance which I feel. Either when there is a situation comes up, I can handle it. When I have to create a situation, it's little difficult.
So it's not under your control, conscious control, your titiksha. It comes and goes whenever it likes. Huh?
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
it has to be under your conscious control. And that is the whole point of tapas. Tapas is a deliberate conscious action. It is not something that just comes. And everybody is in fact tolerating situations, difficult situations. But because there's no choice. Sometimes you just have to face it. But that doesn't make all difficult situations as tapas. It is that mental involvement,
Yeah.
that conscious aspect, that deliberate aspect that makes it tapas.
Mehtaji, isn't this also another way of Shama, which is done deliberately, controlling
Shama is
of your
calming
mind?
the agitated mind. In
Sorry, the other one, the controlling the mind.
Dhamma,
Yeah,
how is it Dhamma?
because see, you want your mind always says that, you know, it tricks you not to do that. Say if you're doing a fast and it tries to trick you to eat something, or you know, so that is, don't you think that that's where you control your senses or your mind, not to do that, not to indulge?
Yes, you do. See, in Dhamma, what you do, you remove yourself from wherever there is food. You will remove your sense organs from that area, right? Intelligently redirect your sense organs to something else. If you go stand in the kitchen and then you decide to do a fast, it's going to be very difficult, right? So you have to avoid the kitchen. That is Dhamma.
Or that
Titiksha,
physically bringing yourself to diverting yourself.
diverting the sense organs. It can be
Diverting.
physically also. It can even be mentally. That mental is what we call pratyahara, right? We withdrawal of the sense organs. Anyway, that's a different thing. But yeah, controlling or redirecting the sense organs is Dhamma. And changing that very tolerance limit, that is Titiksha. Okay, and you know, the more sensitive a person is, the more Titiksha he or she needs.
It's difficult. Yeah.
And you know, if yeah, and just because you have Titiksha, and if your child does a mistake, doesn't mean that you will let it go. Okay, the Titiksha and the mental peace are for you, but at the physical level, you will still scold the child. But now you are not scolding out of irritation. You are scolding because it's for the child's benefit. The child needs to be disciplined, and so you are scolding, but you are not irritated at all during or even before the scolding. Okay, so this is.
So internally you are calm, you have handled the situation, and externally you still have to be
You still have to do whatever needs to be done.
do what is supposed to be done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For everything, all actions.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay. So this is Titiksha. And then we saw this. Then we go to the fifth one called Shraddha. Okay, let's read this. Shraddha Kidrushi.
Shraddha Kidrushi.
Guru Vedanta.
Guru Vedanta.
Vakyadishu.
Vakyadishu.
Vishwasa Shraddha.
Vishwasa Shraddha.
So now we have come to the next one where the student has asked, what is Shraddha? And the teacher has answered. Now the word Shraddha means faith. Okay, and unfortunately these days the word faith has become associated with politics and religion in a very negative way, and it's not received very well. But in Vedanta, in Shastra, Shraddha is one of the very important qualities to have, and it has a very significant, deep connotation. Okay, and it has to be understood correctly. Now, usually when we say faith, people assume we are talking about blind faith. Faith means that just because I am telling, you must accept, no questions, right? Just because it is coming from this source, it must be blindly swallowed, right? That is blind faith, okay? And Shraddha is not blind faith. We are not talking about blind faith at all. Okay. Now there is another extreme group where if something is said and at first glance it doesn't appear to make sense, or they don't understand, or at first glance it doesn't fit for them, then they instantly reject it, immediately dismiss it, right? Yeah, this thing is meaningless, it makes no sense. And that is no faith. And Shraddha is not no faith either. So then what is Shraddha? Shraddha is healthy faith. Faith that is backed by logic, faith that is vetted by the intellect. It is rational faith. Okay? Healthy faith is called Shraddha. Now, many times in the script,
Dharshini, can we say it is trust?
trust, yeah, trust, faith, same thing. So many times in the scriptures, when we study the Vedas, there are going to be many places where contradictions appear. Okay, so in one place they will say one thing, and then sometime later, totally opposite thing is said. Okay, and it appears as though there is a contradiction. And many times it will happen that there are appears as though there are logical inconsistencies or logical contradictions. And whenever these situations come, whenever this happens, the understanding is that I have not understood it fully and correctly, and not that there is something wrong with the Vedas. Okay, so the validity of the Vedas is not questioned, but my own understanding is questioned. It is questioned again and again until my understanding is fully aligned with my teacher's understanding and with the understanding of the scriptures. Until that full alignment happens, I have faith. That is healthy faith. Okay, so through repeated questioning, through repeated understanding, the alignment is brought, okay, with the proper, correct understanding. Is this clear?
Yes.
Okay. And this questioning attitude, okay, that is allowed in Shraddha. You are not asked to blindly believe anything and everything. You are allowed to question, and you are allowed to verify it with logic. Okay. And in fact, you should be verifying it with logic. The words of the scriptures must be verified by your own experiences and by your own logic. And only when they pass, you will accept. That is Shraddha. It is also accepting pending understanding. So even though right now I have not understood something, I still accept it. Because maybe right now I do not, still have the full way to fit it in my head because of various reasons, but pending understanding, I will accept. We're not saying that you will never understand. It's just that it may happen on a later day. Until then, you have to hold on. That is Shraddha. Now, many times in scriptures, there are many places where some things are beyond logic. Okay, there are many things that are beyond logic. So, for example, okay, fine. So, suppose you look at this, and I ask you, what is the color of this pen? What is the color of this
Blue.
pen? Blue, right?
White.
Okay, so we'll take blue. And now I'm going to say, prove it to me logically that this pen is blue in color. Prove it to me using logic that this pen is blue in color.
You can
The sky is
refer
blue.
with another color, which is blue, with another object, which is blue.
That is not logic, no. That is again how do you use logic to prove that this pen is blue? Is it even possible?
By comparison, no?
Comparison, but okay. What tool are you using?
Eyes.
You're using your eyes.
And the previous knowledge of the color.
But there is nowhere logic involved. You're using your eyes. Even if you bring another object, you're still using your eyes. You're not using logic, are you? There are some things that are so fundamental, they are beyond logic. Okay. And for example, color is one of them. Okay. You can only use the eyes to verify the color of something. If you have a doubt on the color, you can bring it closer, you can take it out in the sunlight, you can do multiple things, but the only instrument with which you can verify color is your eyes. There is nothing else. You cannot use your ears, you cannot use the skin, you cannot use anything else, you can only use your eyes. There is no other way to get the knowledge of color, right? And it is beyond logic also. So many times there are many things that come in the Shastras that are beyond logic. Okay, and Swami Chinmayananda coined a term for this. He calls them illogical.
Mehtaji,
Yes, please unmute.
so like as you said, we don't know. So suppose there is a child, he know nothing about any color, right? There would be someone who will feed, okay, who will feed him, okay, this is a black color, this is a blue one, right? So that person can also teach him or tell him that blue color, we can say, okay, this is a black color. For that child, that blue is black.
It's just a mix up of labeling, no?
So it's like that person has a faith on the person who is teaching him, this is blue or this is black. Then
That
it's a
is
blind
just
faith.
what you are talking about is the label of the color. I am not talking about the name of the color. I am talking about the color itself.
So how a person know that this is a blue, this is a black, or
We
this
are
is
just using
orange
names
or
for
red?
reference. I'm not talking about the name. Separate the name from
Okay,
the color. I'm talking
okay,
about the color.
okay.
How do you verify that this is the color? Only by using your eyes, right?
Yes, yes,
That is the point. Only by using the eyes will you know the color of anything. It doesn't matter what its name is. But the point is using your eyes for the color. And if I tell you that this is, red, you will believe your eyes over me, right? You have so much faith in your own eyes that you will accept without question whatever input your eyes give you. And that is the point.
So I got it, but how it's like, okay, he can differentiate with the colors, okay, this is a different color, this is a different color, but when it comes that, okay, that what is the name of this color, how I differentiate, then this knowledge is given by someone. For me, maybe from books, or maybe from my parents, or maybe from my teacher. So I have a blind faith on books, or on teacher, or on parents.
Yeah, we are not talking about the unique situations where somebody was taught the colors wrong. Colors are something universally accepted. So we are just talking about this universally accepted labels of colors. So just assume everyone accepts what is red and what is blue. Okay, assuming that, even if I tell you that this is red, you will not believe me or you will not accept it. Why? Because your eyes are giving you a different input. And that is the point. The faith on your eyes, the faith that you have on your eyes when it comes to color. There is no other way to verify color, there's no other way to know color. And so you have absolute faith on your eyes. And so when it comes to Shastric topics, there must be absolute faith on the Shastra.
Yes.
You are trying to make a
But
different
I
point.
do believe you, Mehtaji.
Sorry?
Yes,
Actually,
I got it that
I'm
we.
also what I will do is I will continue this in the next class. We will repeat this again. Yes, what were you saying?
Yeah, so like we must have a faith on the scriptures and shastras.
Yes,
There is
but
no
not
doubt
blind
on that.
faith. It is faith that is backed by the intellect.
Logic, yes, logic.
Right. So we'll come back to this. There is, going with this color example, there is a point to it. So we will discuss that in the next class. Okay. Any questions? All right, let's end. Yeah.
Yeah, so the sadhana that we do, does it come under Kamya Karma or Nitya Karma?
Which one? Which sadhana?
Sadhana, if a guru tells you to do a sadhana, like a mantra.
Most sadhanas come under Nitya Karma.
Okay.
The purpose of sadhana is to reduce FIR, right? So then definitely.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
But so I have a question here now. As we said, this sadhana comes up under Nitya Karma. Why we do sadhana? To have peaceful mind. Then it comes under a desire. Like I want to have a peaceful. It's a, now again it's a desire.
Is it
So
a
how?
binding desire or is it a non-binding desire? If one day you don't do your yoga practice, how much does it disturb you?
Yeah, it makes it's like I'm missing something.
The whole point is to keep the calm state of the mind, to reduce
Okay.
fire, chitta shuddhi.
Okay.
This is the whole point of any sadhana. And the nature of sadhana is that initially it may appear that it's disturbing you, but going on, that disturbance will also reduce.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, we'll end with Purnamada and next time we will continue with Shraddha again. Okay. Om Purnamada Purnamidam
Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya
Purnamevashishyate. Om
Om
Shanti
Shanti Shanti Shanti
Harihi Om
Harihi
Shri Gurubhyo
Om
Namaha Harihi Om
Shri Gurubhyo Namaha
Om Namah Shivaya. Thank you all and see you.
Om Namah Shivaya. Thank you, Mitaji.
Thank you, Medhaji.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Om Namah Shivaya. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.